Welcome back to Storytime with Dave Booker. Appreciate you coming by and visiting with me. Today we're going to continue on with Time Is. We'll do 2 chapters so we get into the actual time travel, because let's face it, that's what this is all about, the fun stuff. So today we're going to do chapters 2 and 3, a look back and their first sojourn. I guess we'll start. So let's go. And of course, my tablet decides to play up. All right, I look back. And once more, I knew I had opened the lecture door. He sat across from me, had placed his hands on his knees, and looked deeply into my eyes with an intensity I found unnerving. I know I have discussed this with you in the past, but you never seem to grasp that if time travel is possible, it has already been accomplished, whether now or in the future, and that all that is past, present, and future is as it should be, whether someone has traveled back, forward, or sideways through time. The past, present, and future all combine to create now, and nothing can change that now because everything combined to create it. I wondered aloud, shouldn't there be multiple timelines if every action created causes something to be altered? No, he slapped his knee. There's only one timeline equal to the sum of all its parts and interconnected seamlessly. No action we do now changes the future because the future is intertwined with the past and the present. He waited for another remark from me, but I was hungry, so I kept my mouth shut and headed for the food. He followed me and continued his lecture. As I started unpacking the bags, he continued to slap his finger in his palm while he went on. Time is continual and linear. It is interconnected and therefore both infinite and finite. This machine we have constructed correlates time periods to the microsecond using a merging of present time and exact representation of any other time, thereby creating a conduit through which a portal is created so that time and this time are bound as a single entity and can be traversed. Using this present fraction or section of time as a base point, we correlate any other time period, adjusting for location using longitude and latitude, as well as adjusting for the rotation of the Earth to give us a junction point. My head began to swim as his voice dinned down. While you have been constructing the doorway, I've been regulating my clock, and it is adjusted down to microseconds. Once calibrated and set, I can put in a latitude and longitude date, location, and time to be placed against our present time, using a variance allowance of 0.0047 seconds. This gives us our traverse junction. As we ate, he continued. Pick a date, time, and place that is significant to you. Be as detailed as possible. He waited with his arms across his chest and an impatient look on his face. Patience has never been his strong suit. I thought of just giving him some random place and time, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this is possible. Why not see something worthwhile? May 1st, 1893, the World's Fair in Chicago. Starting point, the Museum of Science and Industry. Location is 5700 South Lakeshore Drive, Chicago, Illinois, with a time of 0200. This was a date and location for the start of the World's Fair in Chicago. I thought we might need to do this when the fewest people were there. I used Google Maps to get the latitude and longitude. I was even able to pinpoint an area secluded enough that arrival shouldn't be noticed. May I inquire why this particular place and event is significant? He asked as he turned back to enter in the information. I relaxed back in my chair as memories flooded my thoughts. When I was a kid, my grandparents talked about it a lot. It was where they had their first date. My grandpa saved up for a year to take her there. I smiled as I thought of the warm look that came into their eyes when they talked about it. Just talk about all the innovation that they looked forward to seeing in the future. Too bad a lot of them never materialized. I just love listening to their stories. I thought as there myself sometimes. Scott half turned in his chair. I never realized how strong your emotions could be. Your grandparents must have meant a great deal to you. He entered the coordinates and information into the computer and then saved them onto a key, sort of a very thin thumb drive. Excuse me, it's dry in here. I need another. Nothing like a good cup of tea. Sojourn the First. It didn't take long for him to transfer in the coordinates in time. Suddenly the machine started humming. I double-checked the backup battery cells. They were holding at 70% depletion with fill rate equalized at that point. Since fill rate remained constant, I wasn't worried about surges or power drains and gave him the okay. Scott looked at me sadly. I'm sorry, Don, but since this is our first test and we don't know when it's going to happen, I feel it's all right that only one of us should go and the other monitor. Well, I figured he would be the one going, so I resigned myself to my fate and lay back in my chair to wait. He looked at me sharply. Well, what are you waiting for? Go through, spend about 5 minutes there, and come back. Bring back something to identifiable for corroboration. He pressed a corner on the screen, and the opening showed a night view of the back of what I hope and assume is a museum. I stuck my head through and looked side to side to make sure no one was around. I banged against the wall when Scott pushed me through with his boot. Remember, be back here in 5 minutes exactly. I don't want to have the portal open any longer than necessary. I stood there rubbing my nose where it had hit the wall and glared at the fading portal. Don't get me wrong, I really do like Scott, but sometimes he does things I just don't get. I looked around for something to take back. I found a flyer from a stack of them and rolled it up. I also found a package of Juicy Fruit gum and a box of Cracker Jacks in a trash receptacle. Well, they both looked a lot different from the ones I see in the store, so I figured they do. I didn't want to venture too far off as my clothes wouldn't have matched this time period, and I didn't want to try and explain my appearance. I stood at the corner of the building in the shadows and took in as much as I could. Had I had time to think, I would have grabbed my cell phone for a few pictures. I started making mental notes of what I saw from where I was. In front of me was a long pool with gondolas in it. A huge statue of who I assumed to be Columbia was lit up at one end. So a Ferris wheel also lit up to the side. I realized that electricity was still a relatively new invention in the United States. In the far distance, I could smell like Michigan and even thought I could hear the roar of the surf. It was a dazzling sight. My mind suddenly grasped what had happened. I'd gone from 2020 to 1893 in a blink of an eye. I did then what any rational, reasonable, and sane person would do at a time like this. I threw up. I was still leaning over a trash can, heaving my guts out, when a portal reopened. I grabbed the items I had collected and rushed through. At the last moment, I turned for one last look back. I vowed to come back and visit here again. I might even see my grandparents there. Scott gave me a look of revulsion as I handed him the flyer and other objects. Really, Don? 5 minutes and another age and you regurgitate. Yeah, anyways, thanks for the boost through, I countered as I wiped the remnants off my lips. He ignored me as he examined the flyer closely under the light. He checked the gum and Cracker Jacks, comparing them with pictures from the manufacturer's history website. I sat down and started shaking. I still felt sick to my stomach. Maybe these were the effects of time travel. Maybe they were just the effects of my emotions. Although they could have been the effects of the chicken from the Chinese place, but who knew? I grabbed a stick of gum from the pack thinking it might settle my stomach. Thought you got that from the trash. Scott's face was one of disgust when he saw me chewing on the gum. Yeah, it's also over 100 years old, too. I continued chewing. You know, I still think you're running a big risk messing with time, I mumbled. He slapped his forehead. How many times do I have to tell you? There is no risk. No action that we do now could affect anything because if we have affected anything, it has already happened, and therefore this now is because of it, and we would have had to have accomplished it for us to be here, to reach this point. I really hated when he went on like this. Okay, you say that this present is unaffected because anything we will do has already been done, and so we're not altering the past, but are part of it. Is that it? He brightened up considerably. My boy, I do believe you are finally grasping the concept of time travel. He looked up, locked up the machine, closed all the covers, and sealed the panel with the lock of his own creation. A thought suddenly struck me. If everything is so set in time and space, and why all the precautions? He looked at me startled for a second, and a smile crossed his lips. Yes, you are correct. However, this is for my own security of mind. Come, it's time to go home for the night. He didn't have far to go since he lived in this building. I wouldn't care for it myself, but he seemed to do all right. It was off the grid, as they say. Electricity was provided from a sort of turbine fan up on the roof. Well, not really a fan, but a bladed disc extending laterally from a central pole held in place between alternating magnets. So the whole thing hovered. The slightest breeze sent it spinning. The rest worked similar to a normal generator. I have to say it provided plenty of electricity to keep his lab going and the power generators. That was wrong. The rest worked similar to a normal generator. I have to say it provided plenty of power to keep his lab going and power the time machine. Extra energy was held in lithium plate batteries embedded in the walls. The power unit is one of the few items in the facility that I had designed and directed the construction on. In fact, that pleased me immensely. I designed it about 5 years ago, but never had the money to build it. Scott gained a lot more respect for me when I showed him my drawings, as well as the small lantern I had made as a test. Water was provided by hand pump, and that was all he required. His living space area was a 25 by 25 foot space with the camp cot, sink, mini fridge, and an electric range, one bookshelf, and a TV tray. The rest of the facility was filled up with shelves of parts and 2 desks, his and mine. His was kept clean and tidy and usually didn't have much on it other than his computer, a clock, and a clock of his own design, and that I had never yet been able to read, a slide rule, and a stack of papers. Mine was more of a workbench and had collections of boards, chips, solder, and programming module for direct imprint to the chips. I exited out the side door and sunk into the dirt surrounding the facility. He had purchased a farm field 5 years ago and set up his prefab on the edge of it. It's okay in good weather, but snow and rain make it a pain to get to. It's all right for him as he never leaves. I bring in food, most of his supplies. Before I became associated with him, a kid from a neighboring farm would stop by occasionally and do his shopping for him. I live about 3 miles away in town above a small diner and a studio apartment. The location is perfect since I'm not much of a cook and keep body and soul together by eating in the diner most days. Otherwise, I'm left with TV dinners, and frankly, I'd rather eat the TV than the dinner, okay? I know it's an old joke, but it really is how I feel about them. When I got home, I thanked my lucky stars it was Friday and the diner was still open. I stopped inside for some beer, chili, and a couple of hot dogs for dinner. Chinese food hadn't stuck with me very long, and most of it was now in a garbage can in 1893 Chicago. Frank, the owner, and I gabbed for a bit while I waited on the food. I've known Frank, the owner, ever since I moved in. Known him for almost 6 years now, ever since he first opened this place, and I have been a faithful customer ever since. When the food was bagged, I went up to my apartment 2 steps at a time. I tried to watch some television, but kept thinking about my trip. I would have loved to have talked about it with someone, but who would believe it? I checked out Wikipedia on the World's Fair and thought about going back for another visit. This time I'd arrive witut hitting a wall with my nose. The long hours in Scott's laboratory tire me out, even if I haven't done anything strenuous. But tonight I had a hard time sleeping. I put my robe on and made my way to the cubbyhole they called the kitchen and made a cup of instant coffee. I couldn't help thinking about what we had created. What he had created and I assisted on. It still worried me, despite Scott's assurance that nothing we did could change anything. Well, I grew up reading Asimov and Heinlein and watching The Twilight Zone, so my knowledge of what could happen might have been a little skewed. How in the name of all that's wonderful would we know? Can you tell if you have created an alternate universe or timeline or whatever? Would you know if one was created and you were a part of it, or would you retain knowledge of how things should have been? Well, I was wearing myself out thinking about it. I caught a few hours sleep sitting in my chair and woke up around 10. Figured I might as well get my day started. I wasn't due to come in till noon. Scott was a stickler for punctuality. I took my time with a wash and brush up and then checked up on the latest news, which that was depressing. I grabbed an assortment of breakfast burritos from downstairs and with a couple of coffees and headed out. So that's the next two chapters. We're going to do the next two again. That's London Derriere and let me see. You'd think I'd have these memorized by now. That's London Derriere and Sojourn II. So we're going to go on two more trips. After that is Something Sphinx and Clouds and Sunshine. So we're going to do, let's see, that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tell you what, let's do 7 chapters and then we'll stop. And I can do a couple more of the readings from some of these other books, okay? So that's chapters 1 through 3. And we'll keep going. And I hope you like this book. If you don't, let me know. Let me know why. Constructive criticism is always welcome. That's about all I got for today. I look forward to seeing you next time. I'm looking for new books to read besides my own. So if you have a book that you've written and would like it read on here, be more than happy to do it. Just let me know kind of what it's about, and we'll get it here and get it going. So I look forward to getting something new sometime in the near future. In the meantime, I got plenty of books to read here, so we won't be stopping this for a while. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow when I read again from Time Is, my first book of the Time Is series. Thank you for visiting, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good day. Bye. Now comes the arduous task. I gotta use my mouse to stop this thing. Here we go. Bye.